Katie Brooks ran down the massive hallway, her sneakers squeaking against the smooth floor. She was late. Very late. 15 minutes had already passed since her first class started, and she still had no idea where room 847B was supposed to be. The hallways of the Galactic Youth Academy stretched out like a maze, each corridor looking exactly like the last one. She checked her datapad again while jogging. The map showed she was close, but the building layout made no sense to her human brain. Everything was too spread out, too wide, too tall. The doors were enormous, and the ceiling stretched up at least 20 feet above her head. She supposed it made sense when students came in all shapes and sizes from across the galaxy. But right now, it just made her feel small and lost. Katie turned another corner and finally saw it. Room 847B. She felt relief wash over her and picked up her pace. Her backpack bounced against her shoulders as she ran the last few steps. She grabbed the door handle and pushed. The door flew open with a bang that echoed through the entire room like a gunshot. Katie had forgotten that alien doors were designed for species with much less strength than humans. The hydraulic system that was supposed to slow the door down might as well have not existed. The metal door crashed into the wall with such force that it left a visible dent. Every single head in the classroom turned to stare at her. Katie froze in the doorway, suddenly aware that she had just made the loudest entrance possible. Professor Zalthor stood at the front of the class, his 4 crystalline eyes wide with shock. His data tablet slipped from his 3-fingered hands and clattered to the floor. The professor's blue skin seemed to pale to a lighter shade as he stared at the door, then at Katie, then back at the door. One of the students near the front made a high-pitched sound and slumped sideways in their chair. Katie watched in horror as the small creature with purple fur simply fainted. 2 other students who looked like giant rabbits with 6 legs immediately dove under their desks, their long ears flat against their heads. Katie stood there with her hand still on the door handle, not sure what to do. She had practiced what she would say when she arrived late. She had prepared a good excuse about the transport shuttle having technical problems. But nothing had prepared her for this reaction. Sorry I'm late," Katie said, trying to smile in a friendly way. Her voice seemed to make things worse. 3 more students scrambled away from their desks near the door. A thin, green creature pressed itself against the far wall, its eyes huge with fear. Another student made a whistling alarm sound that hurt Katie's ears. Suddenly, red lights began flashing throughout the room. A computer voice announced something in a language Katie's translator hadn't learned yet. Professor Zalthor rushed to a control panel on the wall and pressed several buttons with shaking hands. The alarm stopped, but the red lights continued to flash. "Environmental warning," the professor said, his voice much higher than it had been. "Heat source detected. Biological threat level." No, wait. That cannot be right. Katie looked around, trying to figure out what was wrong. Then she realized the computer was talking about her. Her body temperature. Humans ran hot compared to most species. She knew that from the orientation materials. But she hadn't realized it would trigger actual alarms. "I'm not a threat," Katie said quickly. "I'm just a human. I'm the new exchange student, Katie Brooks. From Earth." The room went completely silent. Even the student who had fainted seemed to wake up at the word Earth, only to faint again immediately. Professor Zalthor's crystal skin changed color from blue to a pale yellow. "Earth," he repeated slowly. "Class 12 Deathworld. You are the human student." "Yes," Katie said, confused by the professor's reaction. "Is that okay? I have all my paperwork." The exchange program approved everything. The professor made a strange gesture with his hands that might have been the alien equivalent of taking a deep breath. Yes. Of course. We were informed. We expected you yesterday. And I did not think you would be so late," Katie offered. "I'm really sorry about that. The shuttle had problems, and loud," the professor finished. "And strong, and warm, and..." He trailed off, looking at Katie like she was a bomb that might explode at any moment. Katie felt her face grow hot with embarrassment. This was not how she had imagined her first day would go. She had been so excited about the exchange program. Earth had only recently joined the galactic community, and she was one of the first students selected to study at an alien academy. She loved learning about other species and had dreamed of making friends from across the galaxy. Now everyone looked terrified of her. "Should I find a seat?" Katie asked quietly, trying to make her voice as soft as possible. Professor Zalthor nodded quickly and pointed to the back of the room. "Yes, please. There." The reinforced desk. It was prepared for the Krolmax student, but he transferred to another campus. "It should hold your weight." Katie walked slowly down the aisle between the desks. Every student she passed leaned away from her. Some actually whimpered. The rabbit-like creatures under their desks made clicking sounds that her translator said meant predator alert. She reached the back of the room and found the desk the professor had mentioned. It was 3 times the size of the other desks and made of some kind of dark metal instead of the light plastic the others used. She set her backpack down carefully and slid into the seat. The desk was designed for someone much larger than her, but it was sturdy. At least she wouldn't have to worry about breaking the furniture. That was one less thing to be anxious about. Katie noticed another human sitting 2 rows away. He was watching her with an expression that seemed like he was trying not to laugh. He had dark hair and looked a few years older than her. He must be the other exchange student the program had mentioned. Professor Zalthor cleared his throat. "Class, this is Katie Brooks from Earth. She will be joining us for the rest of the term. Please make her feel welcome. 4. I5 or Zon." Nobody said anything. The purple-furred student who had fainted was being helped back into their seat by a floating medical drone that had appeared from somewhere. Katie pulled out her datapad and tried to look like a normal student. She could do this. She just needed to be more careful. She would open doors gently, walk quietly, maybe figure out how to lower her body temperature somehow. She reached into her backpack to get a pen, and her fingers touched something round and smooth. Her apple. She had packed a snack from the cafeteria that morning before rushing to class. Katie's stomach rumbled. She hadn't eaten breakfast because of the shuttle delays. She pulled out the apple and looked at it. It was just a normal Earth apple. Red and fresh and perfectly harmless. She lifted it to her mouth and took a bite. The crunch echoed through the silent classroom like thunder. Katie's jaw, strong enough to crack bones and designed by evolution to tear through tough materials, made short work of the apple's flesh. The sound was crisp and sharp and very, very loud in the quiet room. The purple-furred student fainted again. This time, 3 others joined them. Professor Xalthor made a sound like air leaking from a tire and sat down heavily at his desk. The other human in the class finally let himself laugh, a quiet sound that he tried to hide behind his hand. Katie stopped chewing and looked down at her apple. She had a feeling this was going to be a very long semester. She glanced at the door she had dented on her way in. Already, she had left her mark on the academy. She just hoped it wouldn't be the last mark she made before they sent her back to Earth. The class ended with Professor Zalthor dismissing everyone 10 minutes early. Katie suspected it was because he needed a break from her presence. As the other students filed out quickly, giving her a wide space as they passed, she gathered her things slowly. She wanted to give everyone time to get away from her before she walked into the hallways. The other human student waited by the door. When Katie approached, he smiled at her. It was the first friendly expression she had seen all day. "That was quite an entrance," he said. "I'm Connor Hayes. 2nd year, human exchange student." "Katie Brooks," she replied, grateful to finally talk to someone who wasn't afraid of her. "1st year. As you probably guessed. Do things get better? Or is everyone always this scared?" Connor laughed and gestured for her to walk with him. "They get used to you. Eventually. Took about 3 months before students stopped running away from me. You made a bigger splash, though. I never made anyone faint on my first day." "I made 6 students faint," Katie said miserably. 6. Just by existing. "Hey. That's actually impressive," Connor said. "Shows you're authentic." Some humans try too hard to be gentle and quiet, and it comes off as creepy. You're just being yourself. They'll respect that. Once they get over the initial shock, they walked through the hallways together. Katie noticed that other students moved to the sides as they approached, creating a clear path down the center. It felt wrong. She hadn't come here to be treated like some kind of monster. Why are they so scared? Katie asked. I mean, I know humans are stronger than most species. But I'm not going to hurt anyone. Connor stopped walking and turned to face her. His expression became serious. Katie, did you read all the orientation materials? The cultural briefing? The biological comparison charts? Most of them, Katie admitted. I kind of skimmed some parts. There was so much information, and I was excited to just get here and start classes. Connor sighed. Then you missed the important part. The part about Earth's classification. Classification? Earth is a Class 12 Deathworld, Connor explained. That's the highest danger rating a planet can have and still produce sapient life. Only 15 known planets in the entire galaxy are Class 12. Most species in the galactic community come from Class 3 or Class 4 worlds. Nice places with mild weather, gentle seasons, and not many predators. Katie frowned. Earth isn't that dangerous. It's just normal. To us, Connor said. Because we evolved there. To everyone else, Earth is a nightmare planet. Think about it. We have predators on every continent, big ones like bears and lions that actively hunt. We have weather that swings from burning hot deserts to freezing ice storms, hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanoes, tsunamis. Our planet is constantly trying to kill us in new and creative ways. But lots of planets have weather, Katie protested. Not like ours, Connor said. Most species come from worlds with stable climates. Their worst storm would be like a light drizzle to us. And that's before we even talk about the diseases. Katie felt her stomach sink. Diseases? Earth has bacteria and viruses that would wipe out entire civilizations if they got loose, Connor continued. Our immune systems fight off things every single day that would put most aliens in the hospital for months. That's why we had to go through all those medical screenings before coming here. They had to make sure we weren't carrying anything that could start a plague. They reached the cafeteria, and Connor led her to a table far from other students. Katie sat down heavily, trying to process what he was saying. So everyone thinks I'm dangerous just because I'm from Earth, she said slowly. Not just dangerous, Connor corrected. They think you're incredibly, impossibly tough. Because you are. Our bone density would cripple most species. The gravity we grew up in would crush a Threxian or Quellan. The air pressure on Earth would make a Zetian's lungs collapse. And our strength? Lungs. He picked up a food tray from the table. The thin plastic bent slightly in his grip. This tray is made of industrial polymer. It's designed to be unbreakable by normal species. But you and I could snap it in half without even trying hard. We don't think about it because we're used to it. But to them, we're like walking tanks. Katie put her head in her hands. I just wanted to come here and learn. Maybe make some friends. Study xenobiology. I didn't want to be some kind of scary monster. You're not a monster, Connor said gently. You're just human. That's scary enough for most of them. Before Katie could respond, a loud alarm blared through the cafeteria. Connor jumped up, instantly alert. Katie followed his lead, adrenaline flooding her system. Around them, alien students looked confused but not particularly worried. That's the medical alert, Connor said. Someone's in trouble. They ran toward the sound, leaving the cafeteria behind. Katie followed Connor through 2 corridors until they reached the medical center. The doors were open, and inside, she could see a crowd of medical staff gathered around someone. Katie pushed through to see what was happening. The staff tried to stop her, but she was stronger and simply moved past them. On the exam table lay a Yulari student, their green skin turning a sickly yellow color. Medical monitors beeped frantically. What happened? Katie asked. A doctor with multiple tentacles turned to glare at her. "This is a medical emergency. Students must leave." "I'm a xenobiology student," Katie said, which was technically true even if she had only been one for about 4 hours. "Maybe I can help." "You are human," the doctor said, their voice cold. "You are the problem, not the solution." Katie felt like she had been slapped. "What?" "The patient is having an allergic reaction," the doctor explained quickly. "To proteins in the air. Human proteins. Your skin cells, your breath, your scent markers, they are toxic to Eulari physiology. We have 3 more cases in the other rooms. All started showing symptoms within an hour of your arrival at the academy." Katie backed away from the table, horror washing over her. She was poisoning people just by being near them. She hadn't done anything wrong, hadn't tried to hurt anyone, but her mere presence was making students sick. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I'm sorry, I didn't know." Connor appeared at her side and pulled her gently toward the door. "Come on, let them work." Outside the medical center, Katie felt tears threatening to fall. She blinked them back angrily. She wouldn't cry. She had faced harder things than this. She had climbed mountains in Colorado, played soccer in the rain, helped her dad fix broken construction equipment in the summer heat. She was tough, but this was different. This wasn't a physical challenge. This was people being afraid of her. People getting sick because she existed in the same space as them. "I should go home," Katie said. "Back to Earth." This was a mistake. "No," Connor said firmly. "This is just the hard part. The adjustment period. Yes. Some students will have reactions to you. The medical center will give them supplements. They'll adjust. Their bodies will learn to handle human proteins in small doses. It's all in the medical protocols. But what if they don't adjust? What if I keep making people sick?" Connor pointed to himself. "I've been here for 5 months. At first, 20 students had reactions to me. Now it's 0. Their immune systems adapted. The Academy knows how to handle this. You're not the first human they've had. And you won't be the last." Katie wanted to believe him, but doubt gnawed at her. "Everyone is so scared of me." "Fear comes from not understanding," Connor said. "They don't know humans yet. They've heard stories, read statistics, seen warning labels, but they haven't actually gotten to know a human person. That's your job. Show them who you are, not what Earth made you." "How?" "Slowly," Connor advised. "Carefully. Be patient. Learn to move at their pace. Speak at their volume. Exist at their comfort level. And eventually, they'll see past the Deathworlder exterior and see Katie." A medical drone floated past them carrying supplies. Katie watched it go, thinking about everything Connor had said. She could do slow. She could do careful. She had learned to be gentle with fragile things before. Her little cousin was only 3 years old, and Katie had learned to play with her without being too rough. She could apply the same principle here. "Okay," Katie said finally. "I'll try. But if I make one more person faint today, I'm hiding in my room until tomorrow." Connor grinned. "Deal. Now come on. We need to get you registered with the medical center. They'll want to do a full scan and set up monitoring protocols. Standard procedure for Deathworlders." They walked back through the academy halls. Katie moved slower this time, more aware of how her footsteps sounded, how much space she took up, how her presence affected the area around her. Students still moved away, but she tried not to take it personally. She was Katie Brooks from Colorado, Earth. She was a human from a Class 12 Deathworld. She was strong, tough, and apparently terrifying. But she was also kind, curious, and determined. She would prove that humans could belong here. She would show them that Deathworlders could be friends, not threats. It would just take time, and patience, and probably a lot more fainting students before things got better. But Katie had never backed down from a challenge before. She wasn't about to start now. 2 weeks passed slowly. Katie learned to navigate the academy like she was walking through a room full of sleeping babies. Every movement became calculated. Every sound measured. She opened doors with the gentlest touch possible. She walked on the sides of her feet to reduce the sound of her footsteps. She even learned to breathe more quietly after realizing that her normal breathing sounded like heavy panting to species with more sensitive hearing. It was exhausting. Katie sat in the library during her free period, surrounded by empty tables. Other students studied in clusters throughout the large room. But a clear zone existed around her like she carried an invisible fence. She tried to focus on her xenobiology assignment, but her mind kept wandering. She missed home. She missed her family, her friends, her dog. She missed being able to move normally without worrying about breaking something or scaring someone. She missed eating regular meals instead of the tiny portions the cafeteria provided. Human food was expensive to import, and the academy budget only covered basics. "Excuse me." Katie looked up to find a Threxian student standing a careful 5 feet away from her table. The small creature had purple fur and large compound eyes that reflected the library lights. Katie recognized them as Vix, the student who had fainted on her first day. "Hi," Katie said softly. "Do you need something?" Vix clutched a datapad close to their chest. "I have a question about the xenobiology assignment. Professor Zalthor said you might be able to help. He said humans have unique perspectives on biological adaptations." Katie blinked in surprise. "You want my help?" "If you do not mind," Vix said quickly. "I can maintain distance. I have been taking the supplements the medical center provided. I should not have another reaction to your presence." "No, it's fine," Katie said, feeling a spark of hope. "What's your question?" Vix moved slightly closer, though they still maintained a gap that would seem excessive by human standards. "The assignment asks us to analyze extreme environment adaptations. I chose to study creatures from Class 8 worlds, but I do not understand how any creature could survive such harsh conditions. The temperature swings alone should be fatal." Katie gestured to an empty chair. "Do you want to sit?" Vix hesitated, then carefully sat down 3 chairs away from Katie. "I do not wish to be rude. But, it's okay," Katie assured them. "I understand. You need space. That's fine." She pulled up the assignment on her datapad and read through Vix's analysis. The Threxian had done good research, but was missing a key concept. Katie thought about how to explain it in a way that would make sense. "The thing about harsh environments," Katie began, "is that life doesn't just survive them. Life adapts to them so completely that those conditions become normal. Like, you said temperature swings should be fatal, right? But what if a creature's body could adjust its internal temperature to match the environment?" "That is impossible," Vix said. "Maintaining stable internal temperature requires enormous energy." Katie smiled. "It seems impossible if you think about it from your perspective. But what if the creature evolved to not need a stable internal temperature? What if it developed proteins that could function in both hot and cold conditions? Or what if it could hibernate during the worst temperature extremes?" Vix's eyes widened. "I had not considered that organisms might evolve to embrace the instability rather than resist it. I had not considered in. Exactly," Katie said, warming to the topic. "Life finds a way. It always does. Sometimes the adaptations seem impossible, but they work because the creatures evolved alongside the harsh conditions. They don't know any other way to live. Reliven, like humans," Vix said quietly. Katie paused. "Humans evolved on a Class 12 death world," Vix explained. "To you, Earth is normal. But to most species, the conditions you consider normal would be instantly fatal. You can survive temperature ranges that would kill me. You can breathe air with low oxygen content. Your body fights diseases that would devastate entire populations of my people. You do not see these things as special abilities because they are simply part of being human." Katie had never thought about it that way. "I guess you're right. I never felt tough or dangerous on Earth. I was just normal. Average, even. But you are not on Earth anymore, Vix pointed out. Here, you are extraordinary. And frightening. But also fascinating. They worked through the assignment together, with Vix asking questions and Katie offering insights based on her understanding of Earth biology. Katie found herself enjoying the conversation. It felt good to talk about science with someone who was genuinely interested instead of just scared. When they finished, Vix carefully saved their notes and stood up. Thank you for your help. This will improve my assignment significantly. Free. Anytime, Katie said. If you have other questions, I'm happy to help. Vix hesitated at the edge of the table. May I ask you something personal? Sure. Do you ever wish you were not human? Vix asked. Do you wish you were smaller, weaker, less frightening? It would make social interactions much easier. Katie thought about it carefully before answering. Sometimes, especially these past 2 weeks. But mostly, no. Being human is who I am. I like being strong. I like that I can help people who need it. Back on Earth, I helped my neighbors move furniture, rescued a kid's cat from a tall tree, and carried my little cousin on my shoulders for hours without getting tired. Those things made me happy. I don't want to be weak just to make others comfortable. That is a good answer, Vix said. I think perhaps we have been focusing on the wrong aspects of your strength. We see it as a threat, but strength can also be used to protect and help. After Vix left, Katie felt lighter than she had in days. One student had talked to her normally. One student had seen past the scary exterior. It was a start. Over the following week, Katie decided to be more proactive. She couldn't wait for students to come to her. She needed to show them she was safe to be around. She started in the cafeteria. Katie noticed a small Quellen student named Trill struggling to reach the food dispenser on the top shelf. The Quellen barely came up to Katie's waist, and even stretching on their back legs, they couldn't quite reach the controls. Katie approached slowly, making sure Trill could see her coming. Need help? Trill jumped and spun around, their long ears standing straight up in alarm. Yes, but I'll get it for you, Katie said gently. She reached up and pressed the dispenser controls, bringing the platform down to Trill's level. There you go. Trill stared at the food platform, then at Katie. Thank you. That was kind. No problem, Katie said. The next day, she helped a Zixian student named Prill carry a stack of books that were too heavy for their slender arms. Prill had looked terrified at first, but accepted the help gratefully. Small actions, small kindnesses. Each one showed that Katie was more than just a dangerous Deathworlder. The real breakthrough came during a physics lab 2 weeks later. The class was working on an experiment involving contained energy fields. Students worked in teams of 3, and Katie had been paired with Connor and a nervous Velnir student named Zek. Zek looked like a tall space raptor and was one of the few students who wasn't immediately terrified of humans. Probably because his own species was classified as semi-dangerous. They were calibrating their equipment when suddenly an alarm blared from the station 3 tables over. Katie looked up to see green gas pouring from a broken containment unit. The alien students near the leak started coughing and stumbling away. Containment breach, Connor shouted. Everyone out. But the gas was spreading fast, and several students were already on the ground, unable to move. The automated safety systems should have activated, but nothing was happening. The gas poured freely into the room. Katie made a decision. While other students fled toward the exits, she ran toward the breach. The gas hit her face, and she felt her eyes water. It smelled awful and made her throat burn. But her human immune system, trained by Earth's harsh environment, fought off the worst effects. She could see 3 students on the ground near the leak, unconscious or too weak to move. Katie ran to the closest one, a Threxian, and scooped them up in her arms. Their body felt impossibly light. She ran them to the doorway where Professor Zalthor stood, looking horrified. Take them, Katie said, handing over the student. I'm going back. You cannot. The professor started, but Katie was already running back into the gas-filled room. She grabbed the second student, a Quellan, and carried them out. Then, the third, a Yulari, who was turning an alarming shade of yellow. Her eyes burned, and her lungs felt like fire, but she kept going. Connor was at the emergency panel trying to override the safety systems. "The manual vent," he shouted to Katie. "We need to open it." Katie ran to the vent controls on the far wall. The mechanism was stuck. She grabbed the manual release wheel and pulled. It didn't move. She pulled harder, putting her full human strength into it. The wheel groaned and then suddenly spun free. Fresh air rushed in as the contaminated gas was pulled out by the ventilation system. Katie stumbled out of the lab, coughing hard. Her throat felt raw, and her skin tingled where the gas had touched it. But she was alive, and more importantly, so were the other students. Professor Zalthor stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. "You saved them. The gas should have incapacitated you immediately." Katie wiped her streaming eyes. "It hurt, but I could handle it." The medical drones were already treating the 3 students Katie had pulled from the room. They would recover, the professor assured her. News of what happened spread through the academy faster than the toxic gas had spread through the lab. By dinner time, everyone knew that the human student had run into danger while others ran away. She had saved 3 students who would have died from exposure. When Katie entered the cafeteria that evening, something was different. Students still gave her space, but now some of them nodded to her as she passed. Vix waved from across the room. Zek called out a greeting. Katie sat down with her small meal tray and was surprised when Trill approached her table. The small Quellan held their own tray and looked nervous but determined. "May I sit with you?" Trill asked. Katie felt her heart swell with happiness. Trill sat down, maintaining a respectful distance but actually sitting at the same table. "You saved my clutchmate today." Prill, the Zexian, who could not breathe in the gas. "I wanted to thank you." "You don't have to thank me," Katie said. "Anyone would have done the same thing." "No," Trill said firmly. "Most species could not have survived that gas exposure long enough to help. You risked your life for students you barely know. That is not nothing." More students approached as they ate. Vix sat down. Then, Zek. Connor joined them with a grin on his face. "Looks like you're not eating alone anymore." Katie looked around at the small group forming at her table and felt tears prick her eyes. Good tears this time. She had made friends, real friends who saw past her scary exterior to the person underneath. She was still a human from a Deathworld. She was still stronger and tougher and more dangerous than most species in the galaxy. But now, she was also Katie. Just Katie. And that was enough. The announcement appeared on every student's datapad simultaneously. The Galactic Youth Games were beginning in 1 month. All students were invited to participate in various athletic competitions designed for different species classifications. Katie read through the list of events with growing interest. Connor found her in the study hall that afternoon. "You thinking about signing up?" Katie shrugged. "Maybe. It could be fun. What events do humans usually do?" "Depends," Connor said, sitting down across from her. "Most events are divided by biological classification. Class 1 through 4 compete together, Class 5 through 8 together, and Class 9 through 12 compete in their own category. There are only 4 of us in the Class 12 category at this academy." "4? You, me, a Krolmak named Garn who's basically a living boulder, and a Vexian named Wraith who has 4 arms and natural armor plating," Connor explained. "The competition is designed to be challenging even for Deathworlders. They create obstacle courses that should make all of us uncomfortable." Katie felt a spark of excitement. "That sounds perfect. I haven't had a real physical challenge since I got here. Everything is so gentle and careful because everything is designed for species who evolved on easy worlds," Connor said. "But the games course is different. They build it specifically to test Deathworlders. High gravity sections, low oxygen zones, extreme temperatures, Toxic atmospheres. It's meant to be hard. Sign me up, Katie said immediately. The next 3 weeks were spent preparing. Katie trained every morning before classes. Connor helped her, sharing techniques he had learned during his time at the academy. Zek joined their training sessions, his own species being tough enough to handle some of the same exercises. You know there's controversy about you competing, right? Zek mentioned one morning as they ran laps around the academy's outer track. Katie glanced at him. What kind of controversy? Some students think it's unfair for humans to compete at all, Zek explained. They say you're too physically capable. That even in the Class 12 category, humans have advantages. Katie felt her good mood deflate. I haven't even done anything yet, and people are already complaining. Ignore them, Connor said from behind them. He wasn't even breathing hard, despite running at a pace that would exhaust most species. People always find reasons to complain. What matters is that you're allowed to compete. Dean Korvax approved it himself. Still, the controversy bothered Katie. She didn't want to compete if people thought she had an unfair advantage. She was just trying to participate, to be part of the academy community. When had that become controversial? Trill found her later that day looking miserable in the library. Are they though? Katie asked. Maybe I do have an unfair advantage. Maybe I shouldn't compete. The whole point of the classification system is to group similar capabilities together. Trill argued. You are Class 12. You compete with Class 12 students. That is fair. If other Class 12 students have advantages you do not possess, does that make the competition unfair to you? Katie thought about that. No, I guess not. Then stop worrying, Trill said firmly. Compete. Show them what humans can do. The day of the games arrived bright and early. The obstacle course had been constructed in the Academy's largest training facility. Katie stood at the starting line with Connor, Garn, and Wraith. Garn looked like a 9-foot-tall rock formation with legs. Wraith resembled a person-sized insect with 4 arms and plates of natural armor covering their body. Both of them eyed Katie with what seemed like respect rather than fear. Deathworlders recognized Deathworlders. Good luck, human, Garn rumbled in a voice that sounded like grinding stones. You too, Katie replied. The course was brutal. The first section involved running through a high-gravity field that made Katie feel like she weighed 3 times her normal weight. Her legs burned with effort, but she kept moving. Garn pulled ahead in this section, his species naturally adapted to high gravity. Katie came in second, with Connor and Wraith close behind. The second section was a low-oxygen environment. Katie's lungs screamed for air as she climbed a series of walls and crossed balance beams. Her vision started to get spotty, but she pushed through. She had trained in the mountains of Colorado where the air was thin. This was worse, but not impossible. She overtook Connor in this section and caught up to Garn. The third section hit them with extreme heat. The temperature gauge read 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Katie felt sweat pour down her face and back. Her skin felt like it was cooking, but summers in Colorado had prepared her for heat. She had worked construction with her dad in temperatures that would make other people quit. She gritted her teeth and kept moving. Garn started to slow down. His species didn't handle heat well. Katie passed him and took the lead. The fourth section was a toxic atmosphere that made her eyes water and her throat burn. It reminded her of the gas leak in the physics lab. Her human immune system, trained by Earth's endless parade of pathogens and environmental hazards, allowed her to function where other species would have collapsed. She held her breath and ran through as fast as she could. The final section combined everything at once. High gravity, low oxygen, extreme heat, and toxic air. Katie's body screamed at her to stop. Every muscle ached. Her lungs couldn't get enough air. The heat made her dizzy. The toxic atmosphere burned her airways. But she had grown up on Earth. Earth with its hurricanes and earthquakes and diseases and predators. Earth that tried to kill its inhabitants in 1,000 different ways every single day. Earth that made humans tough not because they wanted to be tough, but because they had to be tough to survive. Katie crossed the finish line in second place, just behind Garn, who had managed to surge ahead in the final meters. Connor came in third, and Wraith fourth. All four of them collapsed on the ground, breathing hard and covered in sweat. Garn turned his massive head toward Katie. "You ran well, human. I did not expect you to keep pace with me. You're really strong," Katie managed between breaths. "I thought I had you in the heat section. My species struggles with heat," Garn admitted. "But we recover quickly. In the final stretch, I used techniques my ancestors developed for surviving volcanic regions on my homeworld. They lay there for several minutes, recovering. Other species classifications were running their own versions of the course, each one calibrated to be challenging for their specific capabilities. Katie watched a group of Class 3 students attempt a course that looked easy by comparison, but she knew that for them, it was just as difficult as the one she had just completed. The awards ceremony happened that evening. Garn received first place in the Class 12 category. Katie stood on the second-place platform, a medal hanging around her neck. Connor and Wraith stood on the third and fourth-place platforms, respectively. But what surprised Katie most was the reaction from the crowd. Students cheered for all four of them. Vix jumped up and down in the stands, waving a sign that said, "Go, Katie." Trill had brought a whole group of Quellen students, who applauded enthusiastically. Even Professor Zalthor stood and clapped. After the ceremony, students approached Katie to congratulate her. Not just Deathworlder students, but species from all classifications. They wanted to know about her training, her strategy, how she had managed the heat section so well. A Threxian student named Lyra approached shyly. "I was one of the students who signed the petition against you competing. I want to apologize. I did not understand that the classification system exists for exactly this reason. You earned your place on that platform." Katie shook Lyra's hand carefully, mindful of her strength. "Thank you. That means a lot." That night, Katie sat in the common room surrounded by friends from a dozen different species. They talked and laughed and shared stories about the games. Zek demonstrated how he had attempted some of the human training exercises and failed miserably, making everyone laugh. Vix showed holographic recordings of the competition, and they all analyzed different strategies. Katie felt something she hadn't felt since arriving at the academy. She felt like she belonged. She was still human. Still from a Class 12 Deathworld. Still stronger and tougher than most species in the room. But now, that wasn't all she was. She was also a friend, a student, a competitor, and a member of the academy community. Connor sat down next to her with a drink. "Feeling good?" "Really good," Katie admitted. "I didn't win, but somehow that makes it better. I competed fairly, and I did my best. That's enough." "It's more than enough," Connor said. "You showed everyone that humans can compete without dominating, that we can participate in the community without being a threat. That's worth more than any first-place medal." Katie looked around at her friends, at the species who weeks ago had been terrified of her. She thought about how far she had come since that first day, when she slammed the door open and made half the class faint. The dent was still in that door. The maintenance crew had offered to fix it several times, but Professor Zalthor had asked them to leave it. He said it was a reminder that change often comes with chaos, but that doesn't mean the change is bad. Katie smiled. She had definitely brought chaos to the Galactic Youth Academy. But she had also brought something else. She had brought a human perspective, a Deathworlder's determination, and a willingness to bridge the gap between species who seemed too different to coexist. Trill tapped her on the shoulder. "Katie, we are planning a study group for the upcoming xenobiology exam. Will you help us again?" "Absolutely," Katie said. Vix floated over using their personal hover device. "And afterward, perhaps you could teach us more about Earth? We have been researching your planet and found many fascinating details. Did you really have creatures called dinosaurs that were even more dangerous than modern Earth predators?" Katie laughed. Oh, you haven't heard anything yet. Let me tell you about the time period called the Jurassic. As she launched into an explanation of Earth's prehistoric past, watching her friend's eyes grow wider with each detail, Katie realized something important. She had been so worried about being scary, about being too strong, too tough, too different. But her friends didn't see her as a threat anymore. They saw her as Katie, the human who was always willing to help, who had saved students during an emergency, who competed fairly even when it was hard, and who patiently answered questions about her bizarre Deathworld home. She was exactly who she needed to be. And that was perfect. 3 months after Katie's arrival at the Galactic Youth Academy, everything seemed peaceful. She had settled into a comfortable routine. First, classes in the morning, lunch with friends, study groups in the afternoon, and evenings spent in the common room learning about alien cultures while teaching others about Earth. Her friends no longer flinched when she moved suddenly. Some of them even initiated hugs. Though, they were careful. Gentle hugs that showed trust. But peace never lasted long. Katie should have remembered that. The first sign of trouble came during breakfast. Katie sat with Vix, Trill, Zek, and Connor, eating and discussing their upcoming cultural festival assignment. Each student needed to present something from their homeworld culture. Katie was planning to teach Earth music, specifically folk songs from different regions. Suddenly, all the datapads in the cafeteria chimed simultaneously with an emergency alert. Students looked at their screens, confusion spreading through the room. Katie read her own screen and felt her blood run cold. Security breach. All students remain calm. Shelter-in-place protocols are now active. What does that mean? Vix asked nervously. Connor's face had gone pale. It means someone got past the Academy's security systems. Someone who shouldn't be here. The lights in the cafeteria shifted to a dim red emergency mode. Automated doors began sealing, locking down each section of the Academy. Katie heard students crying out in fear all around her. Professor Zalthor's voice came over the communication system. Students, please remain where you are. We have detected an unauthorized biological agent release in the main academic building. Do not attempt to leave your current locations. Medical teams are responding. Biological agent. Trill's voice shook. That is a weapon. Katie stood up, her mind racing. Connor grabbed her arm. Safe for you, maybe, Katie said. But there are students in that building. What if the agent is spreading? The medical teams will handle it, Connor insisted. But Katie's instincts were screaming at her. Something was very wrong. She pulled out her datapad and started accessing the Academy's public safety information network. Connor was right that this was a job for professionals, but she needed to understand what was happening. The information that came through made her stomach drop. The biological agent was designed to target specific species based on their genetic markers. It was engineered to incapacitate Threxians, Quellans, Zixians, and a dozen other common species. The medical teams were overwhelmed. 60 students were already showing symptoms. More were falling sick every minute. And then Katie noticed something else in the data. The agent's chemical composition. She recognized some of the compounds from her xenobiology studies. This weapon was designed to be lethal to most species in the galactic community. But there was nothing in its makeup that would significantly affect humans. Earth's diseases were so much worse than this that Katie's immune system would barely notice it. I have to go, Katie said, standing up. No, Connor said firmly. Katie, this is serious. This isn't like the gas leak in the lab. Someone released this weapon deliberately. Someone dangerous might still be out there. Which is exactly why I need to go, Katie argued. I'm immune. You're immune. We're the only ones who can move through the contaminated areas safely. Connor stared at her for a long moment, then nodded reluctantly. Okay. But we go together. And we're careful. They moved toward the sealed cafeteria doors. Katie grabbed the emergency release handle and pulled. The door, designed to be impossible for most species to open during a lockdown, opened easily under her human strength. Alarms blared, but she ignored them. The hallway outside was chaos. Medical drones flew back and forth carrying supplies. Katie could smell something strange in the air. A chemical scent that made her nose wrinkle, but didn't affect her breathing. She and Connor ran toward the main academic building. They found students collapsed in the hallways. Threxians, Quellans, Eulari, all lying motionless or writhing in pain. Katie's heart broke at the sight. She started checking each student, looking for signs of life, calling for medical drones to help those who needed immediate attention. "Katie, Connor," a voice called out. Dean Korvax appeared from a side corridor, his own species apparently resistant to the agent as well. "You should not be here." "We're immune," Katie said. "We can help. Tell us what to do." Dean Korvax looked like he wanted to argue but didn't have time. "The medical bay is overwhelmed. We need to evacuate students from the contaminated zones to safe areas. The agent is concentrated in the main academic building but spreading through the ventilation system. We are trying to shut it down, but someone sabotaged the controls." "Where are the controls?" Connor asked. "Central Environmental Systems Room. Sub-level 3, the dean said. "But it is in the heart of the contaminated zone. The concentration of the agent there would kill anyone in seconds. Even our hazmat suits cannot provide adequate protection." Katie and Connor looked at each other. "We can make it," Katie said. "You are students," Dean Korvax protested. "I cannot ask you to risk your lives." "You're not asking," Connor said. "We're volunteering." They ran through the academy, following the emergency floor plans on their data pads. The chemical smell grew stronger as they descended to the lower levels. Katie's eyes watered and her throat burned. But she kept moving. Beside her, Connor coughed, but maintained his pace. The environmental systems room was locked. Katie grabbed the door handle and pulled with all her strength. The lock broke and the door swung open. Inside, the air was thick with the biological agent. Katie could barely see through the haze. "There." Connor pointed to a control panel that had been physically damaged. Wires hung loose, and several components looked like they had been deliberately destroyed. "We need to reroute the ventilation system manually." Trine. They worked together, using what they had learned in their engineering classes. Katie held components in place, while Connor reconnected wiring. Her hands shook, and her vision blurred from the chemical exposure. But she didn't stop. Students were dying. Her friends were dying. She would not let that happen. "Got it," Connor finally said, pressing a series of commands into the control panel. The ventilation system roared to life, pulling the contaminated air out and replacing it with fresh air from the emergency reserves. They stumbled out of the systems room, both of them dizzy and sick from the exposure. Even human immune systems had limits. Katie leaned against a wall, trying to catch her breath. "We did it," she said. "Not yet," Connor replied, pulling up his datapad. "The agent is clearing, but we still have students who need help. Come on." For the next 2 hours, Katie and Connor worked alongside medical teams, carrying unconscious students to the medical bay, distributing respirators, helping overwhelmed doctors. Katie moved student after student, using her human strength to transport species who were too heavy for the medical drones to lift. She found Vix in a classroom, barely conscious. She scooped up her friend gently and ran them to medical care. She found Trill collapsed in a study hall, and did the same. She moved through the academy like a machine, finding students and getting them help. Finally, as the contaminated air cleared and the crisis stabilized, Katie allowed herself to stop. She sat down in a hallway, her whole body shaking from exhaustion and chemical exposure. Medical drones scanned her and determined she needed treatment for toxin exposure, but she would recover fully. Connor sat beside her, looking just as exhausted. "We saved them," he said quietly. Katie nodded, too tired to speak. Dean Korvax found them there. He looked at the two humans with something like awe. You saved 63 students. The medical teams could not have reached them in time, without your help. You went into areas where the agent concentration should have been instantly fatal. We're from Earth, Katie said simply. We're built to survive things that would kill others. I know, the dean said softly. And I am grateful. The entire academy is grateful. Security forces later found the perpetrators, members of a group called the Purity Front, who believed species should not mix in educational settings. They had released the biological weapon to prove their point about the danger of integration. They had not anticipated that the 2 human students would be immune, or that those humans would risk themselves to save others. The next day, Katie sat in her room, still recovering from the toxin exposure. There was a knock on her door. When she opened it, she found a crowd of students standing in the hallway. Vix stood at the front, tears in their compound eyes. We wanted to thank you, Vix said. All of us. You saved our lives. Katie felt her own eyes fill with tears. You're my friends. Of course I did. But you risked your life, a Quellan student said. Even for students you did not know well. Even though we were frightened of you when you first arrived, you proved that Deathworlders are not monsters. You proved that strength can be used to protect instead of harm. Over the following weeks, everything changed. The story of Katie and Connor's actions spread throughout the academy and beyond. News services across the galactic community reported on the 2 human students who had saved dozens of lives. The Purity Front's plan had backfired completely. Instead of showing the danger of integration, they had shown the value of diversity. The humans, who seemed so scary and dangerous, had used their Deathworlder advantages to protect the vulnerable. The Academy held a special ceremony. Katie and Connor received medals for bravery. Dean Korvax formally apologized for ever suggesting Katie should be segregated in the Deathworlder wing. He announced a new program for integrating students from extreme environments, with Katie serving as the student ambassador. But more than the awards or recognition, Katie valued the changes she saw in daily life. Students no longer avoided her in hallways. The empty tables around her in the cafeteria were now filled with friends. Species who had once been terrified now approached her without fear. One evening, Katie sat in the common room teaching a group of students an Earth folk song. Vix harmonized with her using their species' unique vocal capabilities. Trill kept rhythm by tapping their feet. Zek attempted to dance, though his species' body structure made it awkward and hilarious. Professor Zalthor watched from the doorway, a smile on his crystalline face. He caught Katie's eye and nodded with respect. Connor joined the group, adding his voice to the song. When they finished, everyone applauded. Tell us more about Earth music, Lyra requested. Do you have songs about your Deathworld adventures? Katie laughed. We have songs about everything. Sad songs, happy songs, songs about love, songs about loss. Music is how humans process our emotions and share our stories. Like all species, Vix observed. We may look different and come from different worlds, but we all have music. We all have stories. We all have emotions. Exactly, Katie agreed. Later that night, Katie stood in the hallway outside her first classroom. The dent in the door was still there, preserved as a reminder of her chaotic first day. Someone had added a small plaque beneath it that read, "Change begins with disruption. Progress begins with understanding." Katie traced the dent with her finger, remembering how terrified she had been that first day, how she had made students faint and triggered alarms just by existing, how she had thought about giving up and going home. She was glad she had stayed, glad she had pushed through the fear and misunderstanding, glad she had proven that humans could belong in the galactic community. Earth was still a Class 12 death world. Humans were still classified as dangerous. But now, they were also known for something else, for their courage, their compassion, their willingness to protect those weaker than themselves. Katie had shown the galaxy that the scariest species could also be the kindest. She walked back to her room, passing groups of students from a dozen different species studying together, laughing together, living together in harmony. The Purity Front had tried to tear them apart, but had only succeeded in bringing them closer. Katie thought about her journey. From Colorado to the stars. From scared outsider to trusted friend. From Deathworlder to hero. But mostly, she thought about the simple truth she had learned. Being strong wasn't about how much you could lift or how much damage you could survive. Real strength was choosing to use your power to help others. Real strength was being kind when you could easily be cruel. Real strength was building bridges instead of walls. Katie Brooks was a human from Earth, one of the most dangerous planets in known space. She could crush bones with her bare hands, survive toxins that would kill most species, and operate in environments that were instantly fatal to others. But that wasn't what made her special. What made her special was that she chose to use all that dangerous capability to protect, to save, to care. She chose to be more than what Earth had made her. She chose to be Katie, and that choice changed everything.